Let's start with introducing our co-moderators for today. Lindsay Davis is an ABC News correspondent who covers major news stories around the globe. The Emmy and Murrow Award winner got the only interview with comedian Bill Cosby in the wake of dozens of sexual assault allegations. In 2009, Davis made waves with her Nightline report, Single Black Female, examining why African American women are the least likely of any race or gender to walk down the aisle. She holds a master's degree in communications from New York University and is the author of a best-selling children's book titled The World is Awake. L. Michelle Smith is a contributor at Black Enterprise covering technology, culture, and business. She has more than 20 years of experience as a communicator and integrated marketer at global agencies and a Fortune 10 tech, media, and telecom company. Brand Innovators named her one of the top 100 women to watch. Women of color in STEM recognized her as a technology all-star. A Dallas native, Smith earned a bachelor's degree in English and a Master of Science in Media Studies from TCU. Please welcome to the stage, L. Michelle Smith.
Good morning. Welcome to the 2018 NABJ Newsmaker Plenary. I'm your co-host, L. Michelle Smith. Our overall theme for the convention is driving journalism, technology, and trust. Our focus for the next 90 minutes will be tech-driven journalism. We have a hashtag for you. Don't want to go too far without saying that. It's hashtag NABJ That's NABJTECH. Make sure as you're tweeting and sharing on social media that you're using the hashtag. I want to take you back. Well, first of all, let's thank our sponsors, the Kresge Foundation, who's given very generously to have this session. Let's give them a hand. They've given to us tremendously. I want to take you back a little bit over a decade, to the year 2007. Now, for some of you in the room, that wasn't too long ago. Some of you were very young. But some things happened in 2007 that would tee us up for this conversation today. There was a small startup by the name of Twitter that showed up at a little festival called South by Southwest and introduced its platform, which was made for the wireless device. Something else happened in 2007. Something called the Facebook decided that it wouldn't just be for college kids anymore and introduced itself to the general public. Later that year, they would also introduce a wireless platform. Something else happened in 2007. Does anybody else know? The introduction of the iPhone. Apple introduces the iPhone. Why am I outlining all of this for you? Suddenly, mobile social became a thing. And in 2008, everything changed because Android introduced the HTC Sense, which actually was the first open source device out there, and it drove the price down on these devices. So suddenly, people who look like you and me, underrepresented groups, were able to access the internet in more ways than they had before, simply in their pocket and on the fly. Which meant that with a hashtag, you could start a movement from your house on your way to the bus. You could even make headlines. This is a new digital economy we're standing in, and there's so many technologies out there besides social media. The Internet of Things, you've heard of IoT, you've heard of augmented reality, you've heard of artificial intelligence. Some of these things you may be using already and you just didn't even know. Well, I want to introduce our next person who is going to give us a demonstration and a keynote. Friend of mine, political commentator, Roland Martin, host of TV One, senior analyst for the Tom Joyner Morning Show, author, international speaker, Roland does it all. Roland is also a former NABJ Journalist of the Year and is currently a member of the NABJ board, serving as Vice President of Digital. Roland is going to show you the tools you need to have in your digital backpack in order to be successful. Come on, Roland. Let's give him a hand.
All right, folks, how we doing?
Should have gone the other
That's
way.
it? Y'all awake? Last night was just the first night.
I just realized this was.
Like, man, y'all was sitting here sleeping. All right, then. So we talk about how do we operate in the digital world. The first thing it requires for us is to always be prepared. Because one, you never know exactly what in the hell is going to happen and how things work. So this morning's a perfect example. And so when we were coming in here, so Lively is working? Lively is working? So when we were coming in here, I asked the question, are we live streaming the event? And folks said, no, we're not. And so they said, hey, we can set a camera up, and then it's fine, we can send it to Facebook. But the reality is, so she's down here using a Mevo camera and is streaming this right now. But here's the problem. This is only one angle. So the reality is you really want that particular signal, which is coming from the folks there and the folks in the back. And so they said, well, hey, we don't have the equipment it's going to be. I said, it's not a problem because wherever I go, I carry a Teradek encoder with me. Because what we do is we do live streaming all across the country. Before I came here, I was at the Jeffrey Osborne Golf Classic, and we actually live stream events Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday from there. And so I said, no problem, I'll be back. So I went to my room, and I said, I'll come back down because I always have my stuff with me. Now, some of y'all about to freak out right now because trust me, I will. So you're going to say, oh, my God, this is your gear bag. And the answer is yes. This is a 22-inch bag, which allows me to fit overhead on an airplane. So wherever I go, this bag goes. There's nothing I can't do with what I have in here. So wherever I roll with my MacBook Pro, I roll with my iPad as well because I use it for different purposes. Now, I'm not sure how we're going to do this on the camera angle, so let's see here. So when I open this up, I'm telling y'all, so the whole point is not that you have to carry all of this stuff like I do. But when I open this up, and let me see if I can do it this way so you can actually see what I roll with. Now, some of y'all right now saying, what the hell is wrong with him carrying that stuff all over the place? What is in this bag? First of all, you see that Mevo camera right there? I have two of those cameras. I also have a Canon X825, which has two XLRs on it, which means that no matter where I go, I can plug it up to a Mote box as well as a handheld microphone wherever I go. Also, I have in here Sennheiser wireless microphone and transmitter as well because I don't like actually being wired. Lavalier as well. In addition, multiple batteries. When I say batteries, how many of y'all have been out and you're like, oh my God, my phone is dying. My power is dying. I don't know what to do. That's why we roll with this here. This particular charger here allows me to plug up actual devices using the USB. And so we have a live view unit where we actually live stream remotely. We can walk around and live stream. We don't actually have to be tethered to an Ethernet line. I have this as well. Now, Eva was freaking out. She's like, oh my God, Roland, you got to get mic'd up. I was like, Eva, calm down, I'll be fine. She's like, no, but the session is starting, you'll be fine. The audio dude is back there telling me I need to be mic'd up. I'm like, dude, I have done television for years. I know how to put a microphone on. Don't worry about it. Because so you're saying, what was I doing backstage? I just told you, we were trying to sit here and do the stream. My man is still trying to hook it up. So what I roll with, and actually I have it back there, I actually have two of them, is a Teradek encoder. And what that does is, this encoder here allows for me to hook up Ethernet, or I can do Wi-Fi. I can hook up HDMI. I got a Blackmagic SDI adapter. And so if that camera has SDI, I can feed it. This here connects to Switchboard Live, which is the app that I use, which allows me to live stream to Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, all at the same time. Something happens, you go somewhere and you say, well, you know what? I think it's going to happen this way, so I'm just going to have my regular stuff. But things change. Why did I get the Blackmagic HDMI? Because when George Curry, one of our great journalists, when George Curry died, his family asked me to speak at his funeral. And so I said, I'll be there. But a lot of our members could not attend George's funeral in Tallahassee, Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And so we go to the church, and I said, we're going to live stream. I before was using HDMI right out of my camera to live stream. But the camera they had there, the brother had SDI. I'm always thinking about what might happen that's a negative, and I'm thinking about how to ensure that I don't have a problem. And the reason this is important because no matter what happens, I'm in a position that if news breaks, if something happens, I'm always there. I told you about the Canon XA25. Why do I use that camera? So how many folks know about the format AVC HD? Wow, okay, all right. So you have really two formats of video. AVC HD, which is your highest level in terms of video. Then you have MP4. How many of y'all heard of MP4? Okay, praise the Lord. All right. So here's the deal. With AVC HD, you shoot that, you can't take that file and immediately upload it. You actually have to encode that file, make it an MP4 or another form to be able to load it to the internet. The Canon XA25, they make the Canon XA35, 30 and 35. The beauty of that camera is that you can shoot AVC HD and MP4 at the same time. And so in the A slot, I shoot AVC HD, my highest form of video. In the B slot, I shoot an MP4. So whatever happens, I'm able, if something happens right now, if I shot at AVC HD, I would have to take that file, put it in my computer, encode it, bring it down, reformat it, output it, upload it. That takes too damn long when something major happens. By me being able to shoot an MP4, I can take that card out, immediately pop it into my iPad or my iPhone, and upload it directly to the internet. That happened in Selma 50. Selma 50, when they had the 50th anniversary of the Bloody March in Selma, Diane Nash, one of Dr. King's lieutenants, refused to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with former President George W. Bush. She said, I don't walk with warmongers. And so she refused to march. When I caught up with Dorothy, Dorothy told me the story. I said, oh, hell yes, we uploading this. I sat there, did the interview with Dorothy, and at that time, I had my camera crew was somewhere else, and y'all seen the Canon power shots, small cameras? The interview was done on that particular camera, a Canon power shot, and so I recorded that, recorded MP4, popped that card out, put it into my iPad, immediately uploaded. It was on YouTube 10 minutes after our conversation, and 15 minutes after that was uploaded, it was on Fox News, criticizing her. I'm saying all of that is because this is about speed. It's about speed. It's also about how can you be as compact as possible if you are a one-man, one-woman band, because you're not going to be able to roll with an audio person, a camera person, and it's just you. Same thing. I talk about the Mevo cameras, also have a GoPro in here as well. Now, the beauty of the GoPro is I can shoot it 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second. And you see this little device right here. Y'all might be saying, what's this? Well, I can also clip this onto my cap. Now, y'all are going, really? So, yeah. So, a lot of times when I got a baseball cap on, I'll clip it on. And so, perfect example, with the Jeffrey Osborne last year with a softball tournament. Well, I'm playing a softball tournament. I'm also thinking about a shot. What's interesting? Hey, I want a different shot of the pitcher on the mound, Magic Johnson pitching. So, guess what? Magic, clip this damn thing on your hat. I'm thinking totally different. I had two of these. I go to the umpire. I put one on him as well. I am constantly thinking about different shots and how to actually do the job, but I'm using technology to actually make it happen. In addition to that, when I talk about how you must, we talk about power as well. How many of y'all have Mophis for your phone, for your iPhones? That's why y'all walking around here with these dead-ass iPhones in about 2.5 hours, okay? I roll with 3 of these. Why? If I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, that phone probably be down to 10% by around 10:30 because I'm using it. I pop this one in, it's going to take me to 2 o'clock. I pop the next one in, it's going to take me to 6 o'clock. I pop the next one in, it's going to take me to 10 p.m. Because a lot of times when you're out reporting, you're literally up at 7 a.m. and you're not back at your hotel 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I am thinking again about the problem. I'm not trying to be like a crack addict walking around trying to plug something in at the restaurant or somewhere else. Your phone is across the room because you don't have any juice. It's because we aren't thinking ahead when it comes to a particular problem. When I also talk about what I have in here as well, and so who rolls with wireless earbuds? Now, I'm going to ask this question. Anybody can answer it. Why do you think I would roll with a wireless earbud? Anybody? Don't be scared. Yes. More flexibility to move around. Okay. Who else? When you're charging your phone, your earplugs are plugged in. Yes. Untangle the wires. All those are good answers, but they're all wrong. So I'm going to use an example of what happened I was in Birmingham. So last year, 2 years ago, no, it was last year, I received the Hank Aaron Courage Award for my media work and was presented by Hank Aaron and the Atlanta Braves. I interviewed Hank Aaron about Colin Kaepernick. He made his comments, uploaded that to the internet. Fox Sports, ESPN, all these folks called me and they wanted to run the video. I said, great. Now the next day I was in Birmingham. So ESPN calls me and ESPN says, hey, we want you to come on Kerry Champion Show to talk about your Hank Aaron interview. No problem. The problem was they couldn't find a production. There was no studio in Birmingham for us to be able to do the interview. And so they were going, dang, what can we do? I'm like, don't worry about it. Roland got it back up. I said, do y'all have in your control room a FaceTime connection? He said, yeah. I said, fine. We're going to connect via FaceTime to my iPad. We stood outside of the Birmingham Museum with the Fred Shuttlesworth statue behind us, connected to an iPad in front of it. You can go on YouTube, you can see the video, and connected via FaceTime. So the problem you then had is, I have an IFB, but now you got wires and everything like that. So with the wireless earbud, I'm able to go from Bluetooth to the iPad to the wireless earbud, so now I can actually hear. So this was the IFB. Again, I'm thinking ahead of the potential problem. So when it happens, I got my stuff with me and I'm already there. I roll with my own Wi-Fi. I don't depend on there being Wi-Fi or an Ethernet where I'm going, because you might have to do that as well. The point here when I'm talking about how you must think in terms of a 21st century journalist, you must understand that you're not going to be able to have all of the staff and everybody rolling with you at all times. You must be able to think differently. Over here, I have some audio cables. I'm also on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and so a lot of times in terms of how we roll with audio. This happened at NABJ when we were in Washington, D.C., when Hillary Clinton spoke. And so one of the issues that we had was getting audio out as well. And so what I did was I went and got an audio cable, which is in here somewhere. I went out, got an audio cable that allows for me to be able to connect to an audio board to record the audio into the iPad using the Twisted Wave app. Now, why is that? We were having audio issues with the cameras. And so I said if we record clean audio through the iPad, then we're able to then connect. We could take that audio file and then just sync it with the video. Now, sometimes, again, you're thinking, oh, they got XLR. We're all good. Guess what? The XLR inputs were all taken. What wasn't taken? This size. Having this adapter allowed me to be able to plug it into that 1/4 inch input, go XLR out of that into the adapter, into the iPad. Again, what I don't want to be in a position is when I go out somewhere, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and I encounter a problem, then it's kind of like, damn, I can't get what I'm trying to get. No, having all of this allows for me to be in complete control to get the content, because at the end of the day, That's the difference between seeing me on ESPN talking about Colin Kaepernick and then somebody else at home going, damn, I wish I had thought about that. We have to be constantly aware of technology, and we're walking around with these phones, we're walking around with Androids and iPhones, not realizing that literally in our hands are complete newsrooms to be able to disseminate information. I utilize Skype, I utilize Google Hangout, I utilize FaceTime, all of that to be able to tell a story. That's not where we're going, that's where we've been. And when you understand that, that's how you then can monetize it. That's how I can walk into places and I can meet with advertisers. I'm launching a digital show on September 4th, Roland Martin Unfiltered. That's how I can walk into a place and sit down with a company and pitch that show, and 24 hours later, they say, we're in for $250,000. That's how I can go to somebody else and they say, we're in for $250,000. If you don't understand this, you will be dead in this business. Too many of us are walking around just happy to be on air or just happy to be behind the scenes or as writers, not understanding that understanding all of this is called job protection. And I'm now in a position not just to ask for a job, I'm in the position now to hire people to do this as well. That's where we have to be. Last thing, and the time is up. I use who uses Flipboard to actually read news stories? The first thing, I got Flipboard, all my stuff. The first thing I read with Flipboard every day is technology. That's one of my deals. I want to be aware of every single potential tool that makes my job easier, that can make me more money, that can position me as my own media company. That's how every single one of us should be thinking. Thanks a bunch. Michelle, where you be?
Awesome. How are you doing? You
All
did a
good.
great job.
Michelle's like, what's in your bag? I said, Michelle's gonna take
I
too
wanted
damn
to
long.
tee that up for you, but you did it all. It was great. Lots of lessons there. Being prepared.
Go.
Thank you, Roland.
I appreciate it.
Being prepared, being your own media company. Are you ready? Who's going to Best Buy after this? Yeah, okay. A factoid for you. Research is showing that virtual reality will be a $40 billion business by 2020. You know what year it is? 2018. That means most of us may have goggles at home. I do. Anyone else? No, not yet? Eventually you will. We're going to talk a bit about that in a bit when I bring up our next guest. Professor Retha Hill is director of the New Media Innovation and Entrepreneurship Lab at Arizona State University. She's a Detroit native. All right, yeah. She earned her undergraduate degree at Wayne State University and joined the Detroit Free Press, followed by stints at the Charlotte Observer and the Washington Post. She then served as chief editorial officer of BET.com and vice president for content development for BET Interactive. Her students at ASU aren't just journalism majors, they're also computer science majors. They create web applications, social media tools, mobile apps, and they even have gamified journalism. She's going to talk about all of that and what you as journalists, especially Black journalists, should do to prepare for this new digital age. Everyone, Retha Hill.
Good morning. We have a lot to get through, so I'm going to jump into it. But first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really good to be back into my hometown. I attended my first journalism conference here at NABJ when I was a student, a senior at Wayne State University. And I have so many vivid memories of growing up in Detroit, not the least of which were the aftermath of the bloody Detroit 1967 riot and the pain that this city and so many others went through 50 years ago after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. But as we reflect back on those times and those reevaluations of 1968, I think it's important for us to think about how we as Black journalists told the story of King's death and the transition from the Civil Rights Movement to the Black Power movement. By 1968, the Black press had already in many ways passed its prime. The hundreds of Black newspapers that had flourished during the 21st century had dwindled down to a few dozen weeklies by the late 1960s. Already gone were newspapers like LA's California Eagle, the Beacon Journal of Charleston, West Virginia, which back then had 2 Black newspapers, and the Indianapolis Leader, just to name a few stalwarts from our early media history. In 1968, after the assassination, the Chicago Daily Defender was one of only a few Black newspapers that was able to blast the news of King's assassination and the next day's offerings. Most of the others had to wait a week or into the next press run to tell people what was going on. And it wasn't until April 12th that Elijah Muhammad was able to send his condolences to Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Of course, we'll never forget Moneta Sleet Jr.'s Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph of Coretta Scott King as she consoled her young daughter at her husband's funeral. But most Black newspapers were just out of the game. There were only a handful of Black-owned radio stations in 1968, and there was no Black-owned television station back then. That wouldn't come until 1975. There was no BET, no TV One, no OWN, no Tyler Perry Productions back then. Even the Associated Negro Press, which was the AP for the Black newspapers, was out of business. They had gone out of business about 4 years earlier. The Black press did what it could to tell the news and the story of King's assassination and to chronicle those nights of rage that followed and try to explain what this was going to mean to our movement. But today, we have such great opportunity to tell our own story in all its 8K beauty and all its tear-clouded tragedy. We have the tools that can take people back in time using 360 video or take them forward in time using augmented and virtual reality. We can chronicle and visualize every police shooting, every suspicious death, every modern-day lynching, every stand-your-ground assassination, every Black child expulsion, every school without heat or air conditioning or working toilets, or that have books that still tell students that Bill Clinton is president of the United States. But we don't do it because we're largely unprepared. We're largely uninformed. The tools are there. Roland talked about a few of them, but we have 360 video, virtual reality, augmented reality, data visualization, chat box, artificial intelligence bots. But we don't do it because we're largely uninformed. When I go to virtual reality and augmented reality conferences, to coding meetups, and to immersive media training, usually I'm like the only Black person there, and there are very few, if any, Black journalists sitting next to me. Black journalists, Black media, we're still struggling to get a foothold in a media world that's already moved on to immersive media by reporting by artificial intelligence, for example, and enhanced data mining. And Black media, whether it's owned and operated by Black Americans or a division of a larger media corporation, is still struggling, still trying to make a dollar using an outdated business model. Black media is struggling just like we did in 1968, just like we did when the day that King was killed. For more than 25 years, I've been begging us in Black media professionals to embrace our digital future, to get in on the ground floor, to take the reins of these new mediums before others wake up and try to block our entry. In 1995, when I left the Washington Post newspaper to start our little online presence, I remember asking NABJ if I could do a session on these new opportunities. There were jobs to be had, there were things to do there, but largely NABJ, like a lot of other media companies, just weren't all that interested. Not now, and I was just gonna get to that. I wanted to tell our members to come on over, that the coast was clear. But so many in traditional media back then just weren't feeling what we were trying to do. I don't blame NABJ because it was different and it was new. I'm not a computer whiz. I'm not a person for whom programming or coding or development come easy. I've just always wanted to tell our story. When I was 12 years old, just up the road at a little school here, I researched a paper on W.B. Du Bois and how he founded the Crises magazine. He called it the Crises Magazine, a record of the darker races. That was in 1910, and it was the official publication of the NAACP. Now, the Crises, of course, did stellar work from chronicling the rise of the Harlem Renaissance to holding our nation's leaders' feet to the fire when it came to the rights of all colored people. It fought for equal treatment at a time when our men would go off to World War I, World War II, and then get lynched coming home, some of them in their uniforms. It told of Negro communities being burned to the ground because they were successfully following the American dream. The Crises merely asked that the Constitution be applied to us too. Negro lives and dreams mattered, it said. At 12 years old, I knew I wanted to do that. I wanted to tell our story. But it took a while to get there. Of course, I had to graduate from Wayne State University. I had to get training. I had to get my first job at the Detroit Free Press. I landed at the Washington Post a few years out of school, and after 8 years, I was part of the team that founded Digital Inc., which later became WashingtonPost.com. To me, it was an apprenticeship. It was an opportunity to do what Du Bois got to do, to tell our story. Those late nights, hand-coding WashingtonPost.com, because there was no content management system back in 1996. We're talking a long time ago. There was no broadband. There was no WordPress. There was no way to just pull photographs down from some, Google Images bank. I had to sit there and hand code every inch of the Washington, D.C. metro map so that each station connected to another. I did it because I wanted to give people in Washington information to help them to get home, especially working people. I went on to found and be the editorial vice president of BET.com, and I was grateful to finally be able to tell our story, just like Du Bois, of hiring and training the first Black content producers, many of whom who are working in media companies across the spectrum. There were a lot of late nights and a lot of hard work, but it paid off. And it wasn't always pretty. Shortly after we launched in February 2000, we were asked to do a live stream of Founders Day for the Nation of Islam. What Roland is able to do now, it cost us $60,000 to do because we had to hire and position a satellite over Chicago. But we did it because we wanted to muscle our way into the digital media landscape and let people know that Black people were there and always will be there. Again, a lot of mainstream media people just in the late 1990s and 2000s, they just weren't feeling online. They didn't think it was that important. And luckily, NABJ is changing. We're doing those workshops. In recent conventions, thanks to President Glover and people like Bené Wilson and Dr. Sib, we're having these workshops. We're training people how to use Google tools. We're talking about some of the latest technology, but unfortunately, some of those workshops are still not widely attended as some of the others. The art of the live shot and how to break into sports, that's important. And those are usually standing room only. But the workshops on VR or covering technology or artificial intelligence, not so much. We have to get into this. We have to be able to teach these skills, learn these skills. But we still get some of the same questions on whether new media or digital media somehow is taking away from real news reporting. And I shake my head. because when you think about it, millennials, that generation that will surpass baby boomers in terms of the most populous generation in America, that's going to happen next year. They grew up with computers and smartphones, and they engage in media in completely different ways than previous generations did. And Gen Z, that group of young people mostly born after 9/11, natively consume media in digital, short form, and AI-driven ways. We don't understand, as Roland said, that we're already putting ourselves out to pasture. Just going to skip ahead because I'm running out of time here. Which brings me to my final thoughts. One of the great things about technology, besides the fact that it is just incredibly awesome, is that it's always evolving. And that means there's an opportunity for a do-over. Virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality present a real opportunity for those of us wanting to take a chance to learn how to tell our stories in this new medium. And I say, why not us? Who is going to tell the story of Black people in the 21st century using 21st century tools, and not the same tools that we had available to us in 1968? My students last semester, in about 8 weeks, learned how to code in C# and how to build augmented reality portals that can take a user from the real world to another dimension. They're learning how to build items in 3D dimensions. We're probing volumetric VR to bring alive stories from the past. We built an AI chatbot to help people to understand what's happening with climate change. Just last week in New York at a Night News Foundation conference, I released a new tool that I created so journalists can visualize both in VR and AR environments localized data, schools data, arrest data, hate crime data, police shooting data. I don't want America to try to retreat in some Ready Player One fantasy world and escape what this country is all about and what they're doing to us. It's not going to happen on my watch. I'm going to be there right with them. You know, all of these things I do for a reason. I'm an apprentice. I just want to bring these tools to my people, to all of you. One of my most lasting memories of growing up in Detroit is what happened to the automobile industry here in the late 1970s. After the gasoline crises during the Jimmy Carter administration, cheaper, more efficient, and well-crafted Japanese cars were flooding the US market, knocking the big three car manufacturers back in their heels. Automated, robot-assisted factories were creating better cars. Now the manufacturers, Ford and Chrysler and GM, jumped at the chance to learn from the Japanese. They were all in. They went to Japan to study their methods and putting in orders for robots to come to the assembly line here. The UAW, on the other hand, and the auto workers didn't want to hear it. This is your phone, I think, Ms. Smith. No, somebody's here. The UAW had contests where automobile workers would take a sledgehammer to a Honda Accord to see who could destroy it fastest. Owners of Japanese cars would sometimes come out of restaurants or the movies to find their little Toyota smashed to pieces, and with a note scrawled on the window telling them to park their Japanese cars in Tokyo. The union workers wanted to stick their heads in the sand and wish that this new era of automation and robotics would simply go away. It didn't, but many of their jobs did. Journalism, like Detroit in the 1980s, is facing an existential crisis of our own. Trust is down. Our audiences are getting news from so many different sources in so many different ways that fit them and not most of us. Journalists, and especially journalists of color, have to ask ourselves, who do we want to emulate? The car manufacturers who saw the handwriting on the wall and rushed toward the future, or the automobile workers, including my sister who worked at the Dodge main plant here in Detroit, who tried to beat the future back with sledgehammers? Take a class, try online learning, sit up night and on weekends like I do, and follow along with code heads on YouTube. Make mistakes, fail. Try again and teach yourself. Our people, Black people, are looking to us to tell their stories, to help them in this time of unprecedented crises and uncertainty and setbacks, in this time of a new reconstruction. The future of journalism is now. Fox News, CNN, Google, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they'll all be a part of that future. They're going to be there. The question is, will you? Thank you. 30 seconds to spare.
Thank you. Let's hear it for Professor Hill. I don't know about you, but I'm inspired. Now more than ever, it's important to have a free press, a free Black press, and a free Black press that is enabled with technology. Thank you, Professor Hill. Professor Hill and Roland will be back here in a bit. We're going to bring up a panel later on, but first, we want to hear about how technology is impacting Black voters. This is where my co-host for today's event, Lindsay Davis, takes over moderating duties. Lindsay?
All right, good morning, everybody. So while you're inspired, I'm starting to feel like I'm just a dinosaur. I have to get with the program. Okay, so it is my very distinct pleasure to introduce to you Tom Perez, who is chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Tom, I'd like to welcome you to the stage. Thank you so much for being here. You want to have a seat right here? Okay,
right.
I think that right here probably works, right?
Any of Roland's phones here?
Yeah, right, exactly. No distractions.
You only have 4?
So Tom, we're going to get to the future, the road ahead for the Democratic Party in just a minute, but I think first we need to get to know the man who's driving the car. And I was doing my homework.
It's a Ford, by the way.
It's a Ford, okay,
Manufactured right
good.
here outside
Detroit would appreciate that.
Ford C-Max.
So I did a little homework, started digging in the crates, and read a little bit about something that your mom would tell you when you were growing up. And apparently, she said, in order to get to heaven, you have to do what?
Got to have letters of reference from poor people.
And how has that changed your mission?
Well, you know, my folks came here from the Dominican Republic. They were kicked out. They spoke out against a brutal dictator. America became their home, gave us opportunity, and they taught us, to whom much is given, much is expected. And they taught us that, again, you're not renting your time on earth. You got to do something with it. And that's why, no disrespect to Lou Gehrig, I feel like the luckiest person on the face of the earth, because you know, a Pell Grant kid who worked on the back of a trash truck, got an opportunity to work for Ted Kennedy and President Clinton and President Obama, and now this job. And I feel like, my mom is deceased, my dad died when I was a kid. They didn't tell me how many letters I needed. So I figured I got to keep trying.
And just so people who may have missed that, you said you worked on the back of a trash truck. I'm going to call you a sanitation specialist, right? So let's get into the idea. You went to Harvard for business school, but for undergrad you went to Brown, and that's how you were partially affording your education, right? Working on the back of a garbage truck. What kind of lessons have you learned from that?
Well, one lesson I learned is we got to pay interns. And at the DNC, we're paying interns this summer because, you know, if I had someone called me up, Lindsay, and said, hey, you want to go work at the DNC this summer? I would have said, well, you're going to pay me? And if they said, no, you're going to learn something, though, I would have said, no can do. Because you know, I was working 25, 30 hours a week during school because, you know, that was the only way to make ends meet. And so, you know, the value of hard work, the dignity of work. Work is more than a paycheck. You know, it's your identity, and making sure that everybody has that opportunity to have the dignity of work is a big lesson that I learned early on.
2 weeks ago, you were in Atlanta and issued an apology. Why?
Well, you know, people ask me what I miss about my old job. And by the way, the city I spent the most time in my job as labor secretary was Detroit, working to expand opportunity. And what I miss most about my old job is helping people at scale. And we lost that opportunity to help people at scale because we lost elections, not just in 2016, but we lost elections over a long period of time, Lindsay. We lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures. We lost secretaries of state. And AGs, all these other races. And we lost them because politics became way too transactional. We ignored some of our most core constituencies. And the reference you're making is to a wonderful day we spent in Atlanta, where we had an African American Leadership Summit. We had roughly 500 people in town talking about what we need to do to win elections again. And one of the things we need to do is to organize everywhere and to never take anyone for granted. And what I said at that meeting was, you know what? We took our most loyal constituency, African Americans, for granted. And that's a shame on us moment. And we can't allow that to happen again. And we won't allow that to happen again under my watch or in anyone in the future. Because right here in Detroit, I did a listening tour, and I met a woman at an AME church who said to me, you know, Tom, you got to stop showing up every 4th October telling me that you care. And you know what? She's spot on. And I hear people criticize the voters of Flint for not showing up in 2016. Well, you know what? For the voters of Flint, for the residents of Flint, the institutions of government have fundamentally failed them. And it's not on them that they didn't show up. It's on us that we didn't show up sufficiently. And so that's what we're doing as a Democratic Party now. We're organizing everywhere. And it's not just organizing everywhere, but we're leading with our values, fighting for the issues that matter in communities, and doing it everywhere. What I'm as proud of as anything from 2017, Lindsay, was the work we did in Alabama. And we did it for a number of reasons. Number one, I've known Doug for 20 years. Doug Jones is a spectacular leader, an authentic politician. Number two, we are a 50-state party. We abandoned that. And I was here to say, never again will we abandon it. And number three, we wanted to send a very strong message to African American voters that we are indeed putting our money where our mouth is. And thanks to African American women, Doug Jones is in the United States Senate. And you know, I was proud to have played a role in that. We invested roughly $1 million, and basically almost 100% of that was organizing in African American communities and using local folks to help us succeed.
So obviously we're talking about technology. How does technology play a role in the upcoming elections, and as well as reaching out to black voters? Technology
is indispensable to our success. When we were talking this morning and you mentioned Twitter, in 2008 or 2007, our chief technology officer was the 25th employee or so at Twitter. His name is Rafi Krikorian. We knew we needed to up our game technology-wise, and he built their infrastructure. I think about so many of our success stories, and they involve digital engagement. In Alabama, we reached over 1 million voters through text messaging. There's a wonderful mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, Keisha Lance Bottoms. And about 10 days before the election, and her election was a week before Doug's election, we learned that she was down 4 or 5 points in the polls. And we purchased 55,000 cell phone numbers of registered voters in Atlanta. We ran an aggressive text messaging campaign. And these were folks who were sporadic voters. These were folks who hadn't been touched. She won by 700 votes. And if she were here, she would tell you that that interaction made a huge difference. We've just purchased actually 94 million cell phone numbers across the country to make sure that, that when you're reaching out, you have that. Because frankly, if you don't have a cell phone number of a voter, you don't have the ability to communicate. In Georgia, we've got a spectacular opportunity to make history, electing the first African-American woman, Stacey Abrams, to be the first African-American female governor of the United States. And 6 months ago, we didn't wait till 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, we made a 6-figure investment in rural digital organizing of African-American voters, because roughly 1/3 of African-Americans in Georgia live outside major metropolitan areas. And so if we're going to reach them, we've got to be there. And historically, it struck me that the plan for success in Georgia in the statewide election focused almost exclusively on metropolitan Atlanta. And we were leaving way too many folks at, by the curb by not engaging. So that's another example. In Iowa, we have an African American running for Secretary of State. And we're doing a lot of what we call relational organizing. One of the things we've learned, Lindsay, is that if Tom Perez from the DNC sends Lindsay an email saying, vote for Stacey Abrams, it's a lot less effective than if I get your contacts and you are sending emails to those voters. And so we're using a lot of tech tools, and frankly, we're creating some tech tools so that we can have peer-to-peer engagement with folks, and that's lightning in a bottle.
So I want to give you 3 words: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And for those of you who are not familiar with her, she's 28 years old, used to work for Bernie Sanders' campaign, right? And recently, in June, won the New York congressional race against a 10-time incumbent. What happened there? I mean, it seemed that, in many ways, there were a lot of headlines that said she beat the Democratic machine.
Well, she ran a great campaign. She was organized. She was organizing everywhere. She spoke to the issues that people were thinking about. And that brought her success. And I have 3 children. My 2 oldest are daughters. And the day after that election, they said, "I want to meet her, Dad," because she brought a spirit and excitement. And let us be clear also, Joe Crowley has fought for all the things that are so critical in the Democratic Party. I mean, he was fighting for health care. He's been fighting for fair wages and fair opportunities. And I have profound respect for Joe. And Alexandria's victory, what she has in common with Connor Lamb, who we also, who won an election in Pennsylvania a few months back, is that they both were very successful in speaking to the issues that their constituents cared about. And they were both successful in organizing early and organizing everywhere. And that is so critically important. And that's why we're successful as Democrats, because we recognize that in Connor's district, the issues were threefold. The issues were health care, the issue was pension security, and the issue was the right to form a union. In Alexandria's district, it's a very ethnically diverse district, and speaking to immigration, speaking to healthcare, she was able to win. And so when we're speaking to the issues that folks care about, that's how we're able to win, and that's why we've been doing pretty well.
I'm just wondering if it's indicative of perhaps a splinter in the Democratic Party. I want to tell you a headline I saw on CBN that said there's a battle brewing over the soul of the Democratic Party. And so it seems like you have these socialists on the very left, and then you have the moderates. And so how do you unify at this time going forward?
Well, when I see those things, and the thing about it is I look at the 43 races that we've been able to flip over the last year. Virginia and New Jersey were 2 governor's races. And the last time Democrats won Virginia and New Jersey in the same year, the governor's race, was 2005, and that brought about a wave. And Ralph Northam won in Virginia. Phil Murphy won in New Jersey. Phil used to work at Goldman Sachs. Ralph Northam was the lieutenant governor. Doug Jones was speaking to pocketbook issues. I bring all this up because, we must not confuse unity with unanimity. Unity doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that I say. But unity does reflect, and the reason that we're winning in Connor Lamb's district, in Alexandria Ocasio's district, in Alabama, is because we're recognizing that what we have in common far outweighs what our differences are. We as Democrats believe that health care is a right for all, not a privilege for a few. We believe that women's reproductive health is not simply a matter of Roe versus Wade, it's a matter of women's economic empowerment. We believe that the right to vote is sacred. We believe that the Secretary of Education actually ought to believe in public education. And the EPA administrator ought to, get a memo on climate. And we believe that we all succeed only when we all succeed. And we have there's 2 narratives, as President Obama talked about. There are these competing narratives. There's this narrative of hope. and opportunity that says we're all in this together. And then there's this narrative of fear that says, I can only succeed if the immigrant fails. And fear won in 2016. But hope is making a rebound. And we have people who've been winning races who reflect a diversity of viewpoints on a number of these issues. But what we all have in common, where we see unity, is in these core values of ensuring that everybody has a fair shake. I mean, the fundamental difference between Republicans and Democrats for me is pronouns. You know, we're the party of we, and they've been the party of me. You know, if I blow out my neighbor's candle, it doesn't make my candle shine any brighter. And that is, I think, a core value that we all share, whether it's Alexandria, whether it's Connor, whether it's Ralph, folks in between. And so when I hear about the battle for the soul, you know, I think our soul is very clear. Our soul is fighting for everyone, for a fair shake for everyone. It's really, it goes back to the March on Washington. You know, we're for jobs and we're for justice. We're fighting for that opportunity.
I imagine that there have been a lot of lessons learned from over 2016. And so are you feeling optimistic about 2020?
Well, I feel optimistic about 2018. We've got 96 days till the weekend, so I apologize for slightly changing the aperture of your question, because 2020 gets better when we do well in 2018. And the thing we have going for us is we have remarkable enthusiasm everywhere. We're fielding spectacular candidates everywhere. I was in Ohio yesterday. There's a special election coming up there next week for Congress in a seat that's beat red Trump district. And it's gerrymandered beyond all get out, and it's a dead heat, because we've got a great candidate, and he's talking about health care. He's talking about making sure that if you work a full-time job, you can feed your family. And his opponent is just talking about Nancy Pelosi. And, you know, so I feel very good that we're competing everywhere. We've got a competitive race for governor in South Dakota. We've got a competitive race for governor in Wyoming. We are a 50-state party again. We made tremendous progress last year, electing the likes of Vi Lyles in Charlotte and Keisha in Atlanta. And we have an opportunity to make history this year. And one of the things that's so critical, Lindsay, is that we're not simply reaching out to people who voted in the past. We're obviously doing that. But we're touching so many other people. And this is where technology is critical. You know, working with some digital firms and recruiting some to work with the DNC, you know, we've identified roughly 25 million voters, many of whom are voters of color, who are eligible to vote, who are likely Democrats, and frankly haven't been touched. And again, that was a shame on us moment in the past. And what we're doing is we're reaching out. The signature initiative for the DNC this year is I Will Vote, trying to get 50 million folks, and we've just crossed the 30 million threshold to get out there and vote. Because in 2002, there were roughly 26 million less people that voted in the midterm from 2000. In 2014, there was a 47 million vote drop-off. 47 million less folks, the lowest since 1942. We have to change that, and we need to make sure that we are organizing everywhere, and that's exactly what we're doing, and that's why I feel very excited about 2018. And then as we go into 2020, we have two important roles at the DNC. Number one, make sure the process is fair to everyone, fair in fact and fair in perception. And number two, make sure that whoever wins that primary, and we've got a bumper crop of folks that are going to emerge, has the tools they need to thrive. The organizing tools, the technology tools, the voter protection tools, the millennial engagement infrastructure, so that we can get out there and speak to everyone. That's what we're doing. This is fundamentally, it's an infrastructure job, it's a messaging job, it is about making sure we communicate our values, and we communicate them everywhere, and we communicate them through our actions. And you know, our democracy is on fire. I mean, you all know that. You're at the front lines of this. But this ain't the first time this has happened in our nation's journey. And throughout that journey, you have been the fourth branch of government. And it is more important than ever that you continue to do that. And what I know for us is when we have a strong party and a strong infrastructure and we're speaking with our values and we're speaking to everybody, we're taking no one for granted, that's when I feel optimistic. We got a lot more work to do, but I think we can take this country back.
Taking back the House and the Senate. That's what I think I heard you just say. Thank you
Amen.
so much, Tom.
Take care.
All right, all the best to you.
Thank you.
I'm going to now send it back over to my co-host, El Michelle Smith. All right, we'll go down this way.
Thank you so much, Tom. Lindsay?
Thank you, Michelle.
Awesome. How many of you feel a renewed sense of purpose after that conversation? And I've got my glasses on, I've got my clipboard, we're about to get to work. But before we introduce the panel, I want to make sure that you've been tweeting using our hashtag, posting to Facebook, posting to LinkedIn. LinkedIn has hashtags now, they actually work. Use the hashtag. Some of you have actually tweeted in some questions, and so we're going to get to those after I introduce the panel. But let's bring them up. We're going to ask Lindsay to come back up. And we've all witnessed how technology has transformed the journalism industry, and if you don't keep up, you'll get left behind. We've heard that today. So we've assembled a panel of experts to talk about an in-depth tools necessary to stay competitive in this changing marketplace. So first up, we have Arlen Hamilton. You've probably heard her name. She's from Backstage Capital. She's a venture capitalist. Those of you with business ideas, nudge, nudge. Her company has invested more than $4 million in more than 100 companies led by underrepresented founders. Now that's remarkable, that's great. Next up, 20-year-old Jalen Bledsoe of Bledsoe Global Group, a worldwide investment company. At 12 years old, get this, y'all, he launched his own information technology consulting business, becoming a teenage millionaire. Okay, I just need to get close to him and rub up next to him and see if some of that will rub off, right? He gave me some more notes here. He's raised more than $180 million in capital for his clients. Y'all, he's only 20. Jalen, come on up. Simone Oliver is from Facebook. She's a digital content strategist who manages the social platforms, magazine, and lifestyle publisher partnerships. Before then, she was digital director at Allure magazine, where she shepherded the brand's website redesign and led its digital reinvention. Come on up, Simone. And then, of course, we're going to bring back our two demonstrators, presenters, Professor Retha Hill. And Brother Roland Martin. Okay, I think he's going to join us a little bit later. Come on up, Lindsay, let's get started.
Okay, let's get started. Thank you all so much for joining us. So Jalen, let's start with you, okay? You were in 6th grade. Borders Bookstore was going out of business. And you wanted to get out of poverty. How did those two correlate?
Yeah, so I was a fat kid who liked Snickers. Grew up in a single-parent household. My mom had me at 16 years old, and I hated being poor. I hated hearing no to my king-size Snicker. So I realized that technology was my way out of poverty, so I taught myself to program 7 languages out of 10 books over 4 weeks. And from there, in 6th grade, that began to create this company that I have today that is now a global investment company, consulting company.
And so what is the recommendation then? Parents who are really just invested in teaching their kids coding now, is that too late? Welcome, brother.
So I believe right now we're teaching this fad of like teach everyone how to code. And I think, yeah, it's great for a high school student, but for a kindergartner, by the time they can actually get employed by that skill, it's gonna be obsolete. And so for me, I believe in this idea of teaching kids how to learn versus teaching a certain subject. And so for me, I'm a lifelong learner. Last year I read about 72 books. And so for me, I look at how do I always learn? How can I always know what's happening and grow? And so we can teach our kids how to learn versus how to memorize a topic or subject. We're in a much better position.
So Arlen, you invest in technology companies.
I do. I invest in people like you. You know
talk
what I
after
mean?
this.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly.
I'm talking to when we done.
Yeah, right. But that's exactly why I started my fund. A few years ago, I come from an unconventional path to venture capital, to say the least. And I was just meeting people over and over again that were not your straight white man, tech bro type that I had been used to seeing once I understood what the startup world was. Because I would say 6 years ago, I didn't know most of what startups was. I certainly didn't know startups were. I certainly didn't know what a venture capitalist was. And today, I know I'm headed to the store to pick up a few supplies because you're still learning every day. There's still more to learn. And I didn't come from any financial background or any startup background, but I guess I had a little bit of common sense, a little bit of it. And I said, there's so much money going to a certain type of person over and over again, where there are people like the people on this panel who've existed way before I even thought about this, and who had been unrecognized and underappreciated and underestimated. And if they had any backing that was similar to the backing that was being given to someone else on a hope and a dream and a back of napkin, what could they accomplish? And that's why we set out to do it.
And you have to be curious. I mean, the reason I was late, so I was.
What had happened?
So
That phone call
So
he
the
got.
CEO of Black Enterprise called me and wants me to do something at their conference. So two sisters stopped me and they're like, okay, we got to the panel late, so give us 4 things we can learn. And I said, well, you know what, did the panel. So I was going through the hardware stuff, so then I started thinking about software. And so you got 2 sisters, one television, one in radio. They were like, well, but, so we're NABJ, and I'm going, yeah, but literally in your phone, in your purse right now, you have this multimedia device. And so I said, okay, so Tom Perez is the chair of the DNC, he's here. So you're here. So if you said, hey, Tom, can I get you for a quick interview for 2 or 3 minutes? You record on your phone, you can immediately upload it. And so then while we're talking, I remembered, so Teradek has an app called Live Air Solo. It's free. You should write this down, Live Air Solo. This app allows for you to literally, while you're live streaming, you can play video that's already on your phone into your live stream. So if you record an interview, so in essence, you can do a stand-up. And so again, if you don't have that level of curiosity where you want to learn, okay, what's next, what new? Okay, how can I take this thing and then apply it to what I'm doing? And so how does that then relate to a business? Well, I guarantee part of the thing we do is we go, oh, well, that's somebody else's job. No. If she's sitting in an audience and you don't even know she exists, and you're speaking somewhere, and she's sitting there going, hold up, that sister can do this, and she knows the technology, and she knows the content. Oh, I want to talk to that person because they understand how you can build a business. Too many of us, and then you said, I don't want to blame NABJ, they didn't want to do technology sessions. No, I do blame us. Because we, of all people, have to be cutting edge. And so we have to be constantly thinking about how can I develop more skills, more knowledge to make myself more desirable, and no matter what happens in this business, also no matter what age. Look, I'll be 50 in November. I destroy millennials who work with me. You know why? Because they're not as curious.
Because I don't work for you.
Huh? Hold up. 2 words. Bring it. Because again, you have to be willing to learn it and talk to somebody like, okay, so what are you doing? What about that? And you're picking up on that. That's how you're able to constantly stay relevant.
What I'll add with that, technology, we're talking about it as a tool for putting it out there. But with technology, we have no excuse to not learn. With YouTube University, Google University, you can learn whatever you need to learn. So I think there are no more excuses to not be curious and to not learn that.
Well, I'd be curious, what's the next? I mean, we saw Roland's suitcase. What's going to be going into that? And what's the next billion idea you're investing in, giving the backing, the next innovation that you think is going to be blowing our minds?
Out of our portfolio, I would say that we call them unicorns. They're companies that will be worth $1 billion or more. I would say that we have a handful, in my opinion, that will come out of that. When I think about one that just blows my mind every day and that is going to affect the entire world in some way. I think of Uncharted Power. They're led by a black woman out of Harlem. They want to be the first unicorn to be based in Harlem with African roots. And Jessica Matthews is the CEO and co-founder. And she's a scientist and an inventor and an engineer. And they're going to help reshape or at least influence deeply what smart cities look like today and into the future. And for instance, they're working on something now where if you go over a speed bump, as people go over this speed bump, it lights the lights on the city street or in the neighborhood street. And this is one of several things she's working on. And I think it has so many implications. And I know that in the next 18 months, there's a lot going to be rolling out.
I love it because I just funded 20 kids to learn that.
Yeah.
So now I have 20 kids meeting with the mayor of St. Louis on smart city innovation. So now I know I'm on the right path.
They should talk to Jessica and her team.
Let's do it.
Because she also is very interested in paying it forward and giving back.
But you know what? Would love to hear Rita say about this here. So we spend lots of time talking about what's the next thing, but you still have to go old school. What I mean by that is, you can know all of this stuff. You can do VR, you can have all this sort of stuff like this here. But the question is, do you have contacts? See, you can know the technology. The question is, can you still network to get to the people to do the interview? See, we've spent so much time on the technology that I'm running to lots of people I'm dealing with who are young who don't know how to develop the relationship to get the person to sit down and talk.
Well, I think that's the problem with that a lot of old school journalists or journalism organizations have, is that that's their mistaken belief that we're only interested in the bright and shiny, the new and shiny thing. Right. Yes, of course you have to be a good journalist. You have to know how to report, how to have the contacts, how to think about a story. But what I argue is that these new storytelling tools are part and parcel of what we should be doing now. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be a separation. Right. And that once you have those skills, you can then say, how best should I tell this story? Should I tell it as a strictly video story, a digital story? Should I tell the story in augmented reality or virtual reality? Mm-hmm. Because like I have a 15-year-old, talk about Gen Z, and the way he consumes information is just so different. They want to be part of the story. They want to be fully engaged and immersed in it. And if there's a particular story that you can tell with virtual reality, for example, one of the pieces that we'll be working on this semester coming up in the fall is I want to build a virtual model of what Phoenix will be like in 2068, 50 years from now. Spoiler alert, it's going to be really hot. But what I'm trying to do is to get people to focus on how climate change will impact Phoenix and Arizona. I could tell you, I could have interviews with client specialists, or I can build a world based on the science that will show you what it will be like on a day-to-day basis when 116 or 120 is the norm for a typical day in the summer, when the monsoons are so fierce, when it does rain, it floods the I-10 interstate. Mm-hmm. I can show you that, and so I'll choose that tool on that day. Another day, I might take a more conventional approach. But you have to be a journalist first. But as Jalen said, you really can teach yourself. There are so many opportunities online that are free, or Udemy, $10. But you have to be curious, you have to stay up, you have to self-teach, which is a lot of what I do. I'm a lifelong learner.
Well, the reason I want us to understand why the contacts matter is because if I'm sitting, because well, a week ago, I'm on a call with a studio out of Hollywood who's interested in partnering with me on my digital venture. And as we're talking, I said, I need y'all to understand. If I want to reach Will Smith or Common or John Legend, I call them, not their people. Anybody hears that, they say, that's currency. Mm-hmm. Because you can have the technology, you can have the platform, but if you can't get the newsmaker, you can't get to them, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I've probably already been stopped by 100+ journalists here, because I got here yesterday. 3 have asked for a card. 3. Not what your email or whatever. And I don't carry a card. I'll say, this is my email, it's my name, Roland@RolandSMartin.com. There's no way in the world, if you're sitting in here and you don't say, I am not leaving this session without getting her information, his information, her information, and it's not because of what I can do with it right now. It's something may literally happen 8 years from now, but I've developed a relationship with that person, and then all of a sudden it manifests itself. Jalen and I we communicated on Twitter.
Years ago.
Yeah, years ago. He hits me, I hit him what he's doing. He says, hey, have you talked to so-and-so with this agency about what you're doing? I'm gonna forward your stuff to them. Then they follow up. We didn't connect because, I can get this out of Jalen. No, it's just a matter of connecting. Too many of us are not mastering the ability to connect with people, because that also translates into dollars in building a business later.
And also to add to that, to connect with people, but when you get in the door, make sure that you have the skills to back it up, and then also cultivate those relationships.
Talk a good game, you can't back it up.
Exactly. So I want to really underscore the curiosity part of it and the self-learning and the exploration part of it, because again, you get in the door, you show and prove, but then also you cultivate those relationships, because so many times we come to conferences like this, we have that one initial really great meeting you email, and then 8 years goes by, and then when you want a job, then you're like, remember me? And that's not effective. Yeah. That's not effective, and I think that we can do better.
And you did that for yourself, right? You're working at the New York Times. And
Yeah.
What made you decide, wait, I need to change things up a little bit?
So I was at the New York Times for almost 13 years, and in that role, at that company, I had several jobs. And this idea of curiosity really, really resonates with me, because I started to pay attention. Every day I would wake up and I'd read technology blogs, I'd subscribe to newsletters, and trying to understand what the landscape looked like and how it was changing. And after a while I noticed, okay, I started in print, we're moving into digital. What does that mean? That means that reporting is 101, still the same, that does not change, but there are more and more tools to tell different stories, and there are more distribution channels. So when I'm seeing that, I'm coming up through the ranks there, we did not really acknowledge digital, the way the New York Times does now. A lot has changed. So I started paying attention. I moved over to the website, and before my interview, I read HTML for Dummies. And I got the job at the website. And so, you're talking about hand coding for hours, late nights. I did a lot of that. Then I started noticing, okay, I'm a great interviewer, I'm a great reporter, love editing, hate writing. So what does that mean? But I still love storytelling. So I started to teach myself audio recording and audio editing. I enrolled in lynda.com, which was free at the time, and I started teaching myself shooting video, shooting audio. I also, in terms of relationships, I started to talk to people within the organization. I would talk to the video team and say, hey, I didn't study video in school. I went to Howard. I was an English major, psychology minor, HU. And then, I would say, hey, can I take you out for coffee? And I just want to get an understanding of, if I'm doing a one-on-one interview, how do I hold the camera? Where do I put my mic so I minimize my P's and my T's? What does that look like? So then again, cultivating those relationships. And then I made myself more valuable to the organization.
Also, I need you to also, and I know some of y'all about to really freak out. You have to work the building.
Work the building.
You follow me here. When I say work the building, too many of us talk to folks in the newsroom. When I worked at the Austin American Statesman and the Fort Worth Star Telegram, I first want to know who the black people everywhere else in the building. No, I'm trying to tell you. I want to know who the black people in HR, the black people in sales, the black people in production, because, and trust me, I'm about to work on this, being back on the board, I'm trying to get us to understand we have to be in relationship with those folks as well, because they can also teach us the other aspects of the media business that we don't learn.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to the people in sales and marketing and production and HR, one, I'm learning that business side of it, and I'm also learning and maximizing their relationships as well.
Well, Roland, it's the idea of owning the story. When you look at media, I'm dealing right now heavily in Hollywood, and there's the difference between being a talent on a TV show and owning the TV show.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm rep by one of the biggest agencies in the world. They're like, yeah, let's get you as a talent. No, I'm gonna fund my show so I own my voice. And so I think that's one thing we have here. It's the same story, but how do we tell our story in our voice and we own that?
Right.
And that's a big piece that we can really push and own with technology.
Because you could have a media company, but if you don't know how to sell, you're not going to make money.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to market, if you don't understand the operations piece, and so that is probably the biggest disconnect that we've had as an organization, in that we've only focused on African Americans who are on the news side, not on the business side of the news.
That's where the real money
Product
is.
and engineering as well.
Right.
You know, product and engineering. How
Yeah.
are they building? How are they packaging all the hard work that you do? How does it go out into the rest of the world?
I mean, I look at Blavity right now. You know, Blavity just raised a lot of money. You know, I forgot what the number was. $6.5 million, right? And so they've focused on how do we own that narrative, how do we tell that story, and now how do we raise the money to make that possible alone.
Yep.
Okay, I have some more questions, but first, I'm going to open it up to the audience for anybody who has any questions. We have a volunteer who has a microphone, and she'll go over to you kindly. So if you just want to raise your hand if you have any questions.
And I'll come right to you.
Oh, the
Okay.
question right in the back, straight in the back.
Don't hand her that microphone. You better hold it yourself.
I never let my microphone go.
Girl.
Hi, I'm Lachey from Turner Sports. I just have a question for you. So you guys spoke on all the technology that exists out there, and there is a lot of it. What kind of advice can you give to someone to decipher what technology and what site is good to explore and will actually benefit them? And how do you educate the communities that you grew up in or other underprivileged communities on how to access this technology and to let them know that it actually exists?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of, it depends on what you want to do. So if you're in sports or you're interested in content particularly, I think augmented reality and virtual reality is definitely the wave of the future, and things, we're going to see a lot more change as the headsets become smaller, more portable, where people will have on headsets that look like sunglasses instead of the big contraptions that are on their heads now. Both HTC Vive and Oculus released standalone headsets that allow you to move around. So if you want to tell stories with that, then I would say definitely join Unity, get a Unity account, go online and learn how to create content for virtual reality and augmented reality. It's actually not that hard. I taught some high school students how to do it this summer, had a 2-week camp. They learned it in about a day and a half. So it's not that hard. If you want to do 360 video, for example, purchase one of these cameras and start teaching yourself. Tons and tons and tons of videos free on YouTube that'll walk you through some of the best practices. But identify what it is that you want to do. If you want to get into data journalism or artificial intelligence, that's a whole nother set. As far as introducing it to our communities, I mean, I think we have to go through, you know, the church, if they have sessions for young people, if there are community things. I think for years, NABJ has done these high school journalism workshops to teach people about journalism, and we need to introduce some of these skills into those workshops so that we're not just teaching reporting 101, but we're also starting to talk about some of the new technology that's out there. African Americans and Latinos, Hispanics, they've always over-indexed when it comes to technology in terms of consuming it. We got the two-way pagers first. We got the cell phones first. We got the smartphones first. We got the VRs and all of that, the Xbox. So we have the hardware. We just have to give them content that will bring them to it. And then we have to teach our children not to be afraid of technology.
If I can jump in there, you know, it's the idea, sometimes we think we have to invest $1,000 to get the best camera. But really, we see it's the content first, and the quality comes second. So if you can create the content, that's the key. So when I look at 360 cameras, you can buy a camera from Best Buy for $100 that does 360. Right. So if I don't go buy Jordans today, and I go buy a 360 camera, now I'm creating and I'm making money. And so it's where are you putting your money and what's your priority? Because I think we think access is like, I have to have $1 million. No, you don't. No, my first investment was $100. I don't have debt, I don't have a loan, I have no investors. And now I've made over $180 million for our clients. So all you need is first, content, tell the story, and use what you have.
Yep.
And I have 3 websites to get you started if you're starting from scratch. So Product Hunt, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Product Hunt, but if you haven't, it's where people in community can suggest, a curated community can suggest products that are coming out, and then it's categorized but charted. It's charted, so you can know what other people are thinking and what they're into, and it's just a great place to kind of look by category. And then you have Kit, which is run by a Black woman, and I think they just had something big happen. And it's where different influencers put together different kits. So Roland, actually it'd be really cool for you, if you're not on it already, to put together that kit you just showed us. Someone can then go and just buy it all together. And so they have a lot of those kits already up for different types of hobbies and different types of things. The third is, I will do a transparency, it's my fiance's site. It's Why Video is Great. It's a great place to go to really understand sound, video, where do you start at all price points if you want to, just get started.
And then lastly,
it's spelled K-I-T, and I do not know the address.
I think it's kit.com.
Is it kit.com?
I think it's kit.com.
That's great if it is. But it's, I don't know the website. They're not in our portfolio, so I don't have it memorized, but I know that it's a great company.
And lastly, I think even to start, go to the business sections and technology sections of major publishers around the country, and you'll start to see themes that emerge in terms of the winds of change, what's coming down the pipeline, what's happening now, and that will give you kind of a macro view. And then you can go internal and say, okay, what is it that I want out of my career? What are the opportunities? And kind of draw these lines and these roadmaps to the things that you're reading about and where you are now in your career.
Yep.
And I think with social media, it's not enough to be able to put things on Twitter or Facebook, but to really understand the analytics and audience engagement portion of it. And I know the major social media companies have certifications that you can take, Facebook certification, Google Analytics certification, and I believe these are mostly free.
Yeah, these
right?
are free. And we just launched 2 new ones in collaboration with Pointer, so Groups and CrowdTangle. And CrowdTangle is our social listening and analytics tool. We have a lot of publishing partners that use it, many that use it. It helps them optimize and get a better understanding of their audience so that it can inform their audience development strategies.
And as a journalist, if you have these certifications, it's going to help you get that job, not just as a social media director, but a person who really understands the analytics, because as we saw in the last cycle of the elections, that's so important. Cambridge Analytica and all these other ones, they really understand the psychographic nature of the people who are consuming this content, and they were unfortunately able to manipulate people, but you really have to understand how it works, and you can get that certification. That's something that should be high up on your resume.
And what they didn't say, all of that equates to money. At the end of the day, T.I. talked about this in March at the Global Hope Forum. Richelieu Dennis, the brother who bought Essence, has talked about this as well. And that is, and which is what we historically have not done, and that is we have not monetized our culture.
Yeah.
We are the trendsetters. We are the tastemakers. We have not monetized our culture.
We let Kylie do it.
And so,
We let Kylie do it.
Precisely. Yeah. And so when I say it's money, I mean, really, I don't understand how this works. If you can have 1 million followers on your Facebook page, but if you're not necessarily engaging them in terms of your shares, in terms of all of those different things, they're also looking at reach, and that's what so many people are looking at. And so I've sat down with people. Actually, I had a meeting, and they said, okay, that's great. You got 1 million plus followers on Facebook, 500,000 on Twitter, 200 plus thousand on Instagram, X amount on Periscope, so you got 2 million. They said, what's your reach? And I said, here's the reach. Dude said, okay, done. That was $250,000. We have to understand this is about money. This is a business. You can't hire people if you don't make money. There are 2.6 million black-owned businesses in America. 2.5 million have 1 employee. 6 years ago, we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses. We had 1.8 million of them had 1 employee. So in America right now, out of the 2.6 million black-owned businesses, 100,000 have more than 1 employee. When we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses, they were doing an average revenue of $110,000. Today, we have 700,000 more black-owned businesses doing an average revenue of $54,000. I'm not, to be perfectly honest, I'm not interested in more black-owned businesses. I don't want more. I want more black businesses with capacity. Because if you can only employ yourself, then that's fine. But if you don't have the ability to employ 3, 5, 8, 10 people, now that contributes to income inequality, that contributes to all these other things that we talk about. So we must be thinking about capacity. And so you might just be sitting here going, oh, I'm just collecting followers. No, for every person who's following you and you're engaging with them, looking at your clout score, all of that has a direct relationship when you begin to sit down with investors and advertisers, and they're going, that will determine whether or not I'm going to give you 50 or 100 or $250,000 or $500,000. And so we have to think that way. And I know it's scary for a lot of us who have not been raised that way, but this is business. And we must understand business. Not, I'm a journalist, hey, I want to write a story. No,
Get out of your comfort
this
zone.
is business.
It's a whole other session right there.
Yeah. Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, we have a question back here. We have a question back here.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. I'm Joe, independent in Brooklyn. I've spent the last year exploring the tech space as far as AI, blockchain, and other Web 3.0 applications, and especially as they pertain to our field. I'd like to get your thoughts on how they're going to affect our craft, especially as we go into the 2020s.
Well, definitely with blockchain, some people are starting to experiment with using that technology as a way to fund journalism. Yes, some companies out of Colorado, I think some people left the Denver Post to start a news outfit, funding it through blockchain. So I think we have to explore it, not put all your eggs in that basket, because we don't know what's going to happen with the economy in general or how that's going to play out, any of these cryptocurrencies. So I wouldn't rush headlong into it, but definitely understand it. There are some explainers online that at least tell you how it works and what's going on with it. Some people invest in blockchain, and you can do some of that, or to experiment it with yourself if you want to get involved, just so you feel comfortable with it. As far as artificial intelligence, I think that's going to be a huge driver. It's about taking that data, taking all of this information out there and being smarter about how to reach people, how to get content to people, how to understand your audience. And artificial intelligence is a huge field, so it's everything from giving people better suggestions of things to buy, i.e., Amazon, to what people are doing in terms of facial recognition in crowds. All kinds of things fall under that category. I think journalists, particularly journalists of color, we need to understand what's going on with artificial intelligence. Just as the market starts to shake out, we can be there.
Yep.
Yeah. Rita, I actually do have a question for you. So you were talking about Phoenix in 2068, right? And I'm just curious, if we talk about the world in 2068 as far as news as we know it right now. I had a really interesting conversation with a news director in San Francisco a few weeks ago who was talking about, even though they're a top 10 market, they really don't have the viewership that's representative of the population that they reach, because they're in the hotbed of innovation, and these are all the technology people, and so they're not consuming their news, watching it on TV. So when we fast forward to 2068, when we talk about the world, are we obsolete as far as these talking heads on TV?
Oh, yeah. And who knows? It's a crystal ball. You can't see that far in the future, but I think that millennials, Generation Z, they're already moving away from that. They don't go, oh, it's 6 o'clock, let me turn it on, or even let me go to my laptop and watch the talking heads. They want this news coming to them in so many different ways. They want to be immersed in it. They want to feel it. So if you're reporting on the hurricane down in Puerto Rico, they really want you to take them there, and not in a Mark Zuckerberg way, but take them there so you can walk around and you can see what's going on and experience it for yourself. VR and AR particularly have this opportunity to be the empathy engine, to really get people to feel, put themselves in the shoes of another human being, and then perhaps they'll act on it. So I think that's where we're going. And with some of this new technology and some of these new glasses and contact lenses, you'll be able to get so much augmented information as you're walking around the world. And that's where it's important to make sure that we have content up there so people can make choices when they see something happening. Instead of having like, let me go and find this content and read about it, you see something in the real world and you're getting an augmented feed to you about what's going on there. I think that's the wave and that's where we're going. It sounds like science fiction, and to a certain extent it is, but it's here. We have the technology, we just have to make the device smaller.
Also, so let me go back to old school, again, because your question was like, okay, so let's say the newscast is at 5, all right. Right. Traditionally, it has been try to get everybody to watch at 5 o'clock. Right? Then people said, okay, that's irrelevant. No, it's not irrelevant. You still have to have a foundation to build from. So when we were talking about, so folks were saying, okay, so Roland, this digital show, you can do it anytime. I said, no, I can't do it anytime. Because I got to think about staffing, when we do it, cost, time, guests, those different things along those lines. And so when I said, we're going to do the live stream, launching September 4th, every day at 6 p.m. Eastern. Folks said, yeah, but why are you doing it at 6 p.m. Eastern? I said, because one, you still have to do it. You can't go, oh, today we're going to do it at 3:30. Tomorrow we do it at 5. No, 6 p.m. Eastern. But we watch live video differently than VOD. So we're going to restream it at 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 6 a.m., 10 a.m. So 4 additional times in the 24-hour cycle. You still can watch it VOD. Now you take that, people go, well, no, but an hour's too much. Actually, it's not. You can take that hour, and then you can, first of all, a television show is broken into segments anyway, so typically it's anywhere from 6 to 8 minutes. So you can now say, so now I'm gonna just say, so if you wanna watch the whole show, we got you. If you wanna watch just this segment, we got you. If there was something interesting said in that segment, that's a minute and a half, we can now break that down. So it's not the old way has gone out of style. No, it's saying I still got to have a foundation to build from. People trash newspapers every single day. Here's the reality, and if you work in the radio business, you know this, and also in digital. All of these people who hate newspapers, everything that you're seeing now, in terms of most major stories, are still coming from newspapers, because they still have a level of scale and staffing of reporting that nobody else has, even television.
Well, really, it's the same story, just adapted for each medium. Exactly. But I think even in the same conversation, when we flip it, we're going to see more user-generated content. So less of the big organizations creating it, but more users creating it.
But the key is still going to be trust. See, the reason trust is so important because the audience still is going, okay, I don't know you. I kind of know you, but I know you, which means that if you say it, I develop a level of trust. That's where, I mean, I've been engaging when I was talking to the Facebook folks. They initially were not going to do news shows on Facebook Watch. Then they came back and said, we are. The best way to actually combat this notion of fake news and all the rest of this stuff is to say, who are the reputable voices that people trust that you can verify? You can run all out here if you want to, but you still have to have a level of trust where your audience goes, no, I trust you. I don't trust this person, that person, I trust you. That also is currency. And so even with all these other things we're talking about, if you don't develop that with your audience, then you're going to be SOL.
Yeah, and I just want to give people a little bit more background on what News and Watch is. So, to answer your question about how people will consume news down the line, we're testing a one-stop destination for one-stop destination for video on Watch. But we've partnered with reputable news publishers because we want to have high-quality journalism, in video form on the platform. And so there is, something to be said about, reputable journalists. They have, they're doing this already. But again, people's consumption habits change, so they want to see it on their phone. Mobile's very important as well. And so we're experimenting, and this is a test, but I encourage you to check out News on Watch because because, as you go back to your own organizations and you think about, okay, how are people, testing in different formats? We have a diverse set of publishers. Some of it's news analysis, some of it's, anything from business, from sports, topical. So I invite you to take a look.
But I will say this here, and I've already said to the other Facebook folks, look, I get it. Y'all cut deals with the CNNs and the Fox News and Univision, but those are already large entities, and there are those of us who are smaller, who frankly, our audience trusts even more than them, that also need to be a part of that. Because again, that's a large entity now bringing on the same large entities, and we're essentially, so Anderson Cooper having a show on Facebook Watch, I can watch Anderson Cooper right now on CNN, but how can Facebook now elevate voices who are not on CNN, who are not on the Fox News, that audiences trust, utilizing that scale? That's also critically important because there has to be place for that because the audience is now fragmented. The bottom line is, if you say, look, I'm not necessarily watching that, and so I've had multiple conversations with different folks about that because we have to create the space for those individuals who have personal brands that people know and trust beyond, well, they trust CNN. No, they also trust individuals.
Exactly,
Hey, Lindsay,
and I agree with that.
I want to take a question
100%.
from online.
Again, this is an early test, so we definitely want to expand our set of publishers, especially as we learn more, because again, this is a test. So we want to see how people are consuming, and get a better understanding of their behavior, and then expand it if it works.
We ready?
Awesome. Okay, let's take a question from online. This is a really good discussion. What are some affordable pieces of technology that I can buy or download to help tell better stories? So some practical advice here.
They probably already have a phone. The question now becomes, what's on your phone? So again, earlier I said Live Air Solo is a free app which allows for you can actually connect to your YouTube account, your Periscope account, Facebook. Y'all tripping with Tear Deck. I wish y'all would sort that out. But you can literally live stream from there, which allows for you to incorporate video in. So you got to have that. You got to have an audio. Look, you already have a video editing system on your phone. You already have a video recorder on your phone. And so I would tell the person first of all, go read your manual to figure out what's on your phone. No, literally, most people don't even realize what is on their phone, and they're going, well, I need to go buy some stuff.
Or
no,
go Google it.
Go read your manual first to see, because when it comes to technology, you need to say, what do I already have? To your point, without having to go buy a bunch of stuff, and how can I now, okay, is there a cable I can get? Is there a lavalier mic I can get? As opposed to trying to go out and drop $1,000 or $5,000. Read your manual.
We'll take one more question from the audience here. Oh, they said, can you get into the specifics, please?
Yeah.
Because iPhones don't come with manuals.
Oh, yes, they do. Yes, you do. Everything got a manual. What
is it, online?
Everything got a manual. What I'm saying is, so for instance, okay, so if your iPhone, you have GarageBand, audio editing program, already on your phone. You've got iMovie, already on your phone. You've got voice memo, already on your phone to record audio interviews. Okay, if you got an iPhone and you say, I want to see to record the audio of this session, if there's a mute box in the back and you have a cable which is XLR that goes into your iPhone, you now can record the quality audio on your voice memo, and now you got it, and then you can edit it in your software. It's already there. In terms of Time Magazine did a series of cover photos, and the woman she shot all of the cover photos on an iPhone. And what I'm saying is, we have the devices already. Many of us haven't studied what's already on the device and then go, okay, so if it's audio, if it's video, if it's photo, what do I already have? Okay, I'm trying to do podcasting. They already have podcasting on the phones through the iTunes store. It's all there. So what I'm saying is start there. Now when you go from there, go, okay, now what else am I trying to do? So what else can I download or whatever? But really start there to study this and maximize the hell out of this before you buy anything.
And a simple Google search can get you a lot of these manuals online, or the YouTube tutorials.
Yeah, you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I think we're going to take one more question from the audience. We've run out of time. Hopefully some of our panelists will be able to kind of like mix and mingle just for a little bit, and you can approach them one-on-one with your questions.
Mr. Martin, that's my daddy. I'm Roland. Follow me when I say individually. This is what I mean. In the movie The Insider, it was a great line. It said, Lowell Bergman, 60 Minutes, I wonder if my calls would get returned if that wasn't at the end of my name. What I mean by that is, you have to develop the level of relationship where the sources trust you because of you, not because of who you work for. I am not Roland Martin, CNN. I'm Roland Martin, who used to work at CNN. I'm not Roland Martin TV One. So my currency goes wherever I go. My relationships go wherever I go. And so, as I'm saying, creating my own entity, I don't have to have an apparatus to actually do it. That's what I mean by, in terms of your individual brand. Soledad O'Brien has Starfish Media, and she and I talked about this for like 4 years. And we would have these conversations. She was like, yeah, but CNN the brand. I'm like, no, Soledad, you are a brand. This is Me Inc. And do understand when they lay you off, because they only care about their bottom line. At the end of the day, I don't care. I mean, say it right now, you are nothing more than a line item on a spreadsheet. And so you have to be thinking the entire time while you're working somewhere is that if I get to know the person who's the mayor, I'm not getting to know them because I work at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, because guess what? When I met Deron Kirk, he wasn't mayor, but then he became trade ambassador to Obama, and I still knew Ron Kirk. And so I'm trying to get us to think that way, where we take that. Now, when you say collective, now I'm in a position where I've taken my brand and I've built something, and I've employed NABJ people over the years. I'm trying to build something larger where I can employ 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 40 different people. That's what I'm talking about. We can't walk around where we go, well, I'm only associated with this company. No, you have to say, like if you are an actual entrepreneur, you get a contract, they are the client, you're the vendor, okay? Your job as a company to have other clients, so if one client leaves, you've got other streams of revenue. I want you to think the exact same way, even when you're working inside of a company. This ain't employer-employee. No, this is vendor-client. I provide you a service, you pay me for the service. If you don't like my service, you end the relationship. If I want to make more money somewhere else, I end the relationship. That's the same thing entrepreneurs do. And so I want you to be thinking that way. When I say monetize the culture, it then goes, okay, is there an area here, because we keep thinking all so large, is there an area here that I can own that I can potentially generate revenue that nobody else is serving? If so, let me develop that, cultivate it, that may lead to a business. That's monetizing our culture. For me, I know when News One now got canceled by TV One, black folks across America were upset. They blew up the phone lines at TV One. That instantly tells me, audience, they want it. And I ain't talking about black women who are 50, 60, and 70. I had sisters and brothers who were 14 and 18 who were saying, dude, I had a brother who said, we tape your show, and me and my son would watch your show at the dinner table and discuss what was happening. What does that say? That's a business. So I'm not interested in, oh, can we create a whole big old thing and we're gonna have 5 million watching? No. If people are making right now $50,000 a month, having 20,000 people download a podcast over a series of days, and I'm going, so if I can get 100,000 folks watching the live stream each day, and we're gonna podcast it, that means over a course of 5 days, I'm gonna have anywhere from 500,000 to 750,000. So at the end of the month, I'm gonna have 2 million plus folks who are watching that. If you're a Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Ford, or any company, you know what that is? Eyeballs. That's a business. And what I'm saying is, I don't need an entity to do that. That's individually and collective.
So September 4th, is that right?
Yeah.
September 4th, we'll be tuning you in. All right, thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you to our panelists for your participation, of your knowledge, and hopefully you can stick around and kind of answer some questions. Thank you all so much for your time.